Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well, this is the first review I plan on doing with my new webcam. I just bought it a few days ago, so I hope that this review comes out okay. But since I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with this new web camera, I decided I will review a game I'm not quite sure I should be reviewing. I'm not exactly into fighting games. I enjoy them a bit, but I'm not really good at telling you what's balanced or not. Anyways, the game I plan on reviewing today is a game called Blaz Blue, or I think that's Blaz Blue. You're missing an E there, my friends. Anyways, let's start talking about this game, and it is the Steam version. When it comes to the story, I hope you're a heavy drinker because it's one of those games where I think you have to be intoxicated to understand the plot. And while that can be true of most fighting games, don't get me wrong folks, they're usually a convoluted mess. Blaz Blue here takes it to the extreme, throwing in alternate realities, different timelines, and even time loops into the mix. Basically, though, it boils down to our main character, Ragna, is out to destroy something called the Cauldron for reasons really never explained, although it has to do with the psycho girl that looks like his sister, and that's another confusing mess I'm not going to get into here. Anyways, he usually loses the fight, gets set back into time where they merge and become a monster that basically destroyed the Earth in the past. Characters are either trying to stop him either due to a personal beef or because they exist outside of this loop and are just tired of seeing history repeat itself. While the plot is confusing and makes no sense, I quickly fell in love with a lot of the characters. While Ragna himself isn't the most heroic character in fighting game history, I did find myself enjoying the characters of the good-natured but bumbling idiot of Tokaka, the wilting flower of Noel, and the kind-hearted ogre tank Tiger. It has some good points and some bad points. I would recommend you check out the arcade mode before you check out the story for two reasons. Number one, it's actually easier to ingest the arcade mode story than it is with the actual story mode. And number two, you unlock your prize finishers if you beat arcade mode first. So it's actually easier to get through the story mode if you manage to complete the arcade mode. Story mode in itself isn't much fun, however. A whole lot of text and storybook scenes to shift through, and even though it has more dialogue, it doesn't make the narrative any easier or more enjoyable to ingest than the arcade mode. I'll give it this though, the choose your own pathway through each character's mode does have more replayability. Here's the problem though, getting game over sets you back to the load screen where you have to load up the file again and then sit through a wall of text you encounter before the next fight. Yes, there is a fast forward button, my friends, but it's still an extra several second wait before getting into the next encounter, and considering how difficult some of the final scenarios are, this is an unnecessary pain in the ass. I'll give Blaz Blue one thing, it knows how to be a good 2D fighting game. I wonder who developed this. I bet you whoever it was, if I ever reviewed another game of theirs, I gave it a rave review. Okay, well, even Nintendo has Wii Music, folks, and Urban Champion's also on the lineup for those old school fans who really want to embarrass the big N. So we'll just have to go with the fact that Double Dragon 4 here was an outlier because Blaz Blue is really good. It knows how to be its own 2D fighting game. It does take a little off the Street Fighter 2 formula, but not much, and it adds a lot of its own clever elements to make it a really fun game. Okay, first off, let's get started with the characters. Well, we do have some of the fighting game tropes when it comes to the characters. We have the super fast but kind of weak character. We have the kind that changes the ability as the fight progresses character. And we have the boss character that is so freaking OP that he's almost a nightmare to face every time you get to the end of an arcade or story mode. Yeah, I hate Hakuman! But there are a few unique characters, like a boy who fights with a mechanized doll that you can control with the A button, leaving you with two fighters kind of to control at the screen at once. And while he's not the easiest character to use in the game, it's definitely more unique than when you get in a lot of other fighting games. In fact, I've never seen a fighting game use this type of character before. Anyways, the game, like most two fighting games, usually involves two fighters going at it until one of them is on the ground KO. The game specializes the attacks using just four buttons: a light, a medium attack, and then finally a heavy attack. Plus, you also have a move button that just is there for special. Typical of most 2D fighting games, though, are combos to use to do special moves, and when you get the meter gets filled up with, then even more complex moves and finishes can be pulled off. The game does try to simplify things using the second analog stick as a shortcut for some of these moves. However, you're not allowed to determine things like strength or move if you use that. So basically, whatever type of move, if there's a strong or weak variant, if you use that analog stick, it will be up to the computer to decide. So you're kind of playing it by fate there. Anyways, not all of these special moves can be mapped to that second analog stick too, so there's also plenty of moves you'll have to learn to use the old-fashioned way, but it does come in handy when you're trying to do one of those hyper moves, because you do have at least one regular hyper move, and then your really big finisher that you can unlock is also tied to the analog stick too, so that is kind of very handy, especially in the story mode, because you'll need those in the story mode. For the most part, I had fun with the combos and using most of the characters in combat. So what's bad that I can say about this game? Well, as I said before, the story mode sucks, and I don't mean just narratively. It gets points by giving me a choose your own adventure way through the story, but there's not much to the story or the ending. Again, it's just a confusing mess, regardless of what modes you play in. But the worst part is, rather than a continue screen when you die, to let you restart the fight where you lost, when you get a game over, you're taken back to the main menu. Sure, there are save screens everywhere, so you never get to start too far back. In fact, most of the time you start right before your last fight. But you'll have to go through that freaking wall of text I mentioned earlier. Also, the Steam version has no online gameplay. While it is several years old, there really was no excuse when this was released to have that feature not included in it. Anyways, the game is worth trying out for the gameplay. The action is smooth, it's solid, and while it does take notes from other 2D fighters like Street Fighter 2, it improves upon them rather than just merely copying and stealing from them, and it does feel really fun. Blaz Blue, being a 2D fighter, takes notes from arcade games of the late 90s for its look and does them really well. Think like Street Fighter Alpha series, only a lot more modern. The backgrounds are CGI and look really good, but the fighters and the people who populate the streets are all hand-drawn animation, and it looks fabulous. This does look like a 2D anime fighting series, and it's just gorgeous to look, and I can't wait for the studio to show off its next game, which happens to have the Dragon Ball Z license, so that should be really good, just judging from the graphics in this game. As far as the sound goes, we have some pretty good music in the game, and as for voice acting, we have some well-known voice actors used in English dubs. You have probably heard these voices before if you've watched any more recent anime, and the voice acting is pretty much good in those dubs, and it's pretty decent here. So overall, I had no problems with the sound in this package. Blaz Blue Calamity Trigger costs about $10 on Steam, and it's missing that online mode, so I can understand if to some people if it's a deal killer due to that fact. However, I don't really play fighting games online too much because it usually means I'm asking for an ass kicking if I take a fighting game online. That's just how bad I am. So that in itself isn't the deal killer for me personally, but I can understand if to some people it is a deal killer. Outside of the lacking online, though, I did have fun with the single player. It had some really great controls. The story mode is a big miss when it comes to the nonsensical plot, but the characters themselves I found amusing. The controls were great. The way the whole game is set up is really fun, and I just enjoyed myself playing it. So I did find it worthy of the investment that I made in it. Again, if you're looking for something to take online, an online fighting game, you're going to be disappointed here, unfortunately. But offline and just single player, I had a fun time and got my $10 worth of fun out of it. Anyways, folks, this is Tommy the Game Master signing out. I'll see you guys later. But before I leave, if you want, you can hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a member of my community. See you guys later.